Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler, episode 285. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about beer, baseball, and yes, that great big arch as we go to St. Louis, Missouri.
Cathedral. I got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Before we get into this week's interview, I do have three news stories for you. In the first story, if you were confused about the growth of tourism in China, let me just tell you that Starwood, the hotel chain, is planning on opening up one new hotel in China every 2 weeks. The Chinese tourism market is growing very rapidly. And speaking of hotels, good news in the UK, where Best Western, not the same as the Best Western in the United States, is launching a campaign to try and convince other hotels that internet should be free. They say that British businesses would save $1.4 billion a year if all in-room internet were free. Of course, that might mean that hotels would lose $1.4 billion a year, so it might be a tough sell. And then you thought your tour operator was cheap? A Michigan tour bus company was ordered to cease operations after 6 people were found in the luggage compartment of a traveling coach, complete with mattresses and pillows. The driver told police there wasn't room in the passenger compartment for a 235-mile journey to northern Ohio. And as if that's not enough, this is not the first time the company has been caught using the luggage compartment for unauthorized purposes. In August 2010, they were cited for using the luggage carrier as a sleeping berth for drivers. For links to all three of those stories, check out the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Rease Kirchner, who's coming to us from Buenos Aires, but come to talk to us about her hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. Rease, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So even though you're not in St. Louis right now, you were born and raised there, is my understanding.
Yeah, I was born in St. Louis, raised in a suburb of St. Louis, and then I went to college and lived in St. Louis, Missouri up until I moved here.
Okay. And I think for most people, they may know that there's an arch in St. Louis. And if they're baseball fans, they know about the Cardinals. And that may be the end of the knowledge of most people of St. Louis, Missouri. Why should we go to St. Louis?
St. Louis, actually, for visiting, has an amazing amount of free stuff to do, which a lot of people, they think if I'm going to go to the Midwest, I want to go to Chicago, and I love Chicago, but St. Louis has so much more affordable options. We have tons of, all of our museums are free, and we have the largest urban park in the entire United States. New Yorkers want you to believe it's Central Park. It's Forest Park in St. Louis. And we have lots of amazing ethnic food. We have a huge Mexican population, so we have a whole little Mexico area. We have tons of Asian food, and it's a really cool place to just check out.
Excellent. Let's go back and do that a little more slowly. So you mentioned museums. What museums should I check out in St. Louis?
The only museum that's not free that you absolutely must see is the City Museum, which is an art museum made of completely recycled materials, and it's kind of like a giant playground. It's not something where you just look and walk around. You go through caves and tunnels and a several-story slide. There's an outdoor area where it's old airplanes and fire trucks suspended in the air, and you can climb through them and play dodgeball in a giant dodgeball cage, and it's pretty amazing. It's definitely my favorite place in St. Louis.
Sounds very popular with families, would be my guess.
It's very family-friendly, but on Fridays and Saturdays, they're open very late, till I think 1 or 2 a.m. They have a bar, and they turn off the lights and give you flashlights, so a lot of older kids and adults will go.
That's funny. Okay, what other museums should we check out?
The Art Museum within Forest Park is another great one. There's also a History Museum. There's a whole area inside of Forest Park that's the St. Louis Zoo, a couple museums, the Muni, which is an outdoor theater. It's really great to just walk around because it's all free. So you can go to the park, have a picnic, check out 2 or 3 museums, and maybe go to the zoo if it's nice weather.
Okay, and you say 2 or 3 museums. Which museums? Art museums? Or?
So within Forest Park, there's actually 2 big museums, the Art Museum and the History Museum. Both are totally free. And then there's also the St. Louis Zoo, which is one of the best zoos in the country, also free. And then the St. Louis Muni, which is an outdoor theater, which has many free shows. There are paid seats as well, but if you go early, you can get a lawn seat, and they have a lot of events during the summer.
Excellent. Now, you talked about the History Museum. When I think of the history of St. Louis, certainly I think of St. Louis as the gateway to the West.
Right.
In fact, I think that's what your big arch is about there.
Yes.
Is that featured prominently in the museum, or?
Yes, we have a lot about, Lewis and Clark. There's a lot of the history of the explorers of the West, but there's also a lot of other, it's not just about St. Louis. It's not a St. Louis only history museum, but of course we show our own pride and talk about our history. And there's a huge statue outside of it just about the explorers that kind of founded St. Louis, and it's kind of a landmark because it's right on top of a big hill that everyone calls Art Hill, which because of the Art Museum, and that's where people go sledding in the winter.
Excellent. And you mentioned winter. What is your favorite season? When should people come visit St. Louis?
Do not go in the summer. That would be my favorite season in all places is always fall. And St. Louis has a very short but very beautiful fall because we do have a lot of parks and trees. So the leaves are beautiful. It's a nice feel, and we have tons of places to have picnics and do outdoor stuff. But summer is definitely not the time to go. It's known for its humidity. So people that come from places with dry heat and they think that they've seen 110-degree days, that they can handle it, they come to St. Louis and they just want to die. It is miserable hot, and you feel like you're walking through water because it's so humid.
Okay. What else would you recommend that people see when we come to St. Louis?
I would definitely recommend that people go to Grand Boulevard, which some more sheltered residents of St. Louis would say that it's a shady area, which I would completely disagree with, but it's
you
for
don't
all
mean
the
shady
best.
like it has a lot of trees.
No, I definitely mean that some parts of it can be a little bit dangerous, but I think that's a dated belief because I lived a block from Grand by myself, and I thought it was a very lovely neighborhood, actually. Grand Boulevard has a lot of culture. There's tons of restaurants that are completely authentic, tons of Vietnamese and Japanese and Thai. some Mexican, Armenian, just everything you can think of, you can find it on Grand. Off of Grand Boulevard, there's also two really great parks. There's Tower Grove Park, and then there's also Carondelet Park. They're both really big, beautiful parks with bike trails and picnic tables and plenty of places to just do sports, have a good time. They're very green and open, and I love them both.
What's going to surprise me when I come to St. Louis?
I don't think that a lot of people know that we have a huge Mexican population. I feel like people reserve that for places like Miami and Chicago, and that, or I guess not Miami, maybe just Chicago and California and places like that. But we do have a very large Mexican population, and it doesn't color our city in the same way it does maybe Chicago. We don't have bilingual signs or anything like that, but there's definitely a community of a lot of foreigners that you wouldn't know about. There's a small Peruvian community. There's lots of Vietnamese immigrants. It's a much more culturally diverse place than most people think. I think that people think of St. Louis and think of white people and black people, and that's it. That we have a dangerous area where all the thugs live, and then we have suburban people who are afraid of everything. But we really do have a good mix.
Okay. And I sometimes have trouble with this when I ask this to a local, but what do the guidebooks recommend that you think are a waste of time?
I would say going up in the arch is great. I feel that maybe a lot of St. Louisans are going to be very angry with me for saying that, because the arch is beautiful and you should see it, but it doesn't mean you have to go up in the arch, because you have to go inside and you have to go in a tiny egg-shaped elevator that's incredibly claustrophobic, and you have to be with 5 other people, and you're forced to go up. There's no escape. They make you watch a very boring video about how it was built. And you get to the top, and it's just a view of the city. Yes, it's a beautiful aerial view, but it's nothing you couldn't see from the plane when you land or any other tall building. And so there's always a long line. It's always hot. It's always uncomfortable, and it's not as impressive as you would think. Now,
I'm going to take a contrary view on this, and probably because I'm an engineer. And
okay.
So you're right, it's a claustrophobic egg-shaped elevator, but I don't know if people have thought about the fact that as you're going up this arch, your concept of what is up in an elevator has to change. And so basically the elevator has to kind of work its way up sideways. And so for me, it was just kind of interesting to see how they solved that engineering problem of having an elevator that doesn't go straight up and down. It goes up in this arc-shaped path. And so that's why it's egg-shaped, is the elevator keeps ratcheting as it goes up. And I found that interesting. So, but again, it might just be me. I am an engineer by training, and I was there with a bunch of other engineers, so...
No, I can definitely see that point of view, because it is a beautiful structure, and that's why I say that you should see it. It's a beautiful structure. I just think that some people, especially if they've already seen aerial, maybe they've been in the Sears Tower, or they've been to these really tall monuments, and maybe seeing a city from high up isn't as impressive as you want it to be.
Okay. You mentioned all of the different ethnic foods and such. Where do you recommend we eat?
Definitely go eat on Cherokee Street, and that's what I would consider Little Mexico, because the entire street is not just Mexican restaurants, but also Mexican bakeries and Mexican stores that have sodas that you can't get in the United States normally, and it's the whole feel of it. Everything's in Spanish, and everyone there speaks Spanish. In fact, many people might not even speak English at all, and the food is delicious, it's authentic, and it's incredibly cheap. It's easy to go in and get a huge burrito, a margarita, and maybe pay $15.
Okay. And you're challenging my notions of the Midwest here, because as a Mexican food bigot from California, someone who believes that you normally can't find good Mexican, fortunately this is getting less true, but who grew up with the belief that you couldn't find good Mexican food outside of California and Texas, you're saying that I can even find that manzana lift, that apple soda that I get in Mexico in a little bodega there that I can't even find here in California?
You absolutely can. I've seen it, and I bought it. They have some great little shops that have the Coke that's made from cane sugar instead of corn syrup, and they have all those Mexican snacks that I had when I was in Mexico. And I worked with a lot of Mexican students when I was there. I would see them carrying their Mexican snacks, and it's really interesting because it's just a small area, but it really does feel like Mexico.
And then I want to take a second try at this. If we were looking for more traditional, because I'm guessing that the Spanish community is a little newer. Mm-hmm. If we're looking for more traditional fare from St. Louis, is there a different place you would send me?
St. Louis is actually famous for a lot of interesting restaurant food. Some of our top things are, we serve toasted ravioli in restaurants, and where I would recommend you get that is Little Italy, which is where we have, it's called The Hill. We don't actually call it Little Italy, we call it The Hill, and it's the whole area of the city where Italian restaurants are, and that's where you'll get toasted ravioli. If you're looking for another one of our famous things, gooey butter cake, which is an incredibly decadent breakfast food that is more of a dessert. If you're looking for gooey butter cake, you'd want to go to Gooey Louie, which is obviously, like the name sounds, just a gooey butter cake place. We also have something called a slinger, which I find disgusting, but it's a diner food that basically has everything that could give you a heart attack in it piled onto one plate.
Good American food, okay.
Exactly. It has a burger, chili, cheese, eggs, French fries, and it's all piled into this massive cheesy lump on your plate, and it's one of our specialties that if you have a strong stomach, you should try it. City Diner would be a great place to get one, or if you're a little bit cheaper, you'd want to go to Uncle Bill's.
Now, here's a question for you, because we've talked about St. Louis here, and I've, at various times in this podcast, called it the gateway to the West. I mentioned it as the Midwest, and of course I didn't mention it as the South, but I somehow think of it as all three of those places. What is St. Louis?
St. Louisans hate to be lumped in with the South. We do not want to be considered a Southern state. We want to forget all about how the position we took in the Civil War. We don't want to associate ourselves with the Southerners of Missouri, because the people in Southern Missouri don't even call it Missouri. They call it Missouri, and that just kills us. So St. Louis, to me, is the gateway to the West. It's the Midwest, but we have cars, not tractors, and we have all of the electronics that you would normally see. I think that people hear Missouri and they think that we're all hicks, but St. Louis is a city, and it is not like that at all.
Now, you're obviously young. Is that something that is generational?
It could very well be generational. I mean, I notice even like Missouri is a swing state, but
sure.
Overall Missouri can be very conservative. But if you ever look at it, St. Louis is always very liberal, because we have so many colleges in St. Louis, and so we have an incredibly young attitude for the city, and so we usually go liberal, and we throw off the conservative poles because St. Louis is very young and hip, and we have so many students. I think that because St. Louis is such a young city full of bright college students, and that we don't want to be associated with the South, that we really want to be seen as a hip city, not the South, or not hicks, and not that we have tractors or anything like that.
Okay. And just for anybody listening, I have plenty of relatives who actually do have tractors, so I don't see anything wrong with that. I never complain about farmers with my mouth full, I believe is what the phrase they say.
Yes, fair enough.
So you mentioned fall being your favorite time. Is there a particular day, though, of the year that if I'm going to be in St. Louis, I really should be there on?
4th of July would be a really good one.
Okay.
We have the fireworks by the Arch are just beautiful, and you can go. It doesn't cost anything, and you can watch it from basically anywhere in the city, but there is a huge riverfront celebration that you can go sit leaning against the Arch and watch the fireworks, and the skyline looks beautiful, and there's so much going on, and there's always food and music, and it's just an amazing time to be there. And even though it is miserably hot, and I did say you shouldn't come in the summer, it's a beautiful time. And at night, it's not as hot, and you can distract yourself by all the good beer and all the beautiful fireworks and eating street food, and it's totally worth it.
And you said all the good beer. That's the first time we've mentioned beer, but there is an association with St. Louis.
Of course. We are famous for Budweiser. I lived 15 minutes away from the brewery, and I could smell it when I was walking around if the wind was strong that day. But that's not our only brewery.
I would suspect that isn't anymore.
My favorite brewery is actually called Schlafly, which is located in Maplewood. The Schlafly Bottle Works is a micro-brewery that has amazing blends, and they also have a great bar and restaurant where they offer a lot of vegetarian and vegan substitutes that are just delicious. It's one of my favorite places in St. Louis.
Okay. And would you recommend a tour? I mean, I'm sure this is something you did as a kid in elementary school.
A tour of the Budweiser? Yes, you should definitely go on a tour. I think a lot of people only know about Bud Light and just plain Budweiser, but there are a lot of other brews of Budweiser that are better and worth trying. And the tour is free, and you get free beer at the end. You get a free tasting, and I kind of recommend doing the whole Busch experience and doing the Budweiser tour and then going to a Cardinals game at Busch Stadium and just really embracing the culture of Busch and the Busch family in St. Louis and the beer and the baseball and everything. Well,
and for me, if I'm going to St. Louis, I'm definitely going there sometime when I can take in a Cardinals game, because we are talking about a great baseball town, and I am a baseball fan. Now, however, the San Francisco Giants did just beat the St. Louis Cardinals today, but we'll see about tomorrow.
I'm actually not a huge baseball fan, but I actually love the St. Louis Blues, our hockey team.
Interesting.
But it is a baseball town. You're not going to find a lot of fans of the St. Louis Rams, our football team, or St. Louis Blues, our hockey team. Nobody really cares about them as much as they care about the Cardinals. And the magic of the Cardinals is really that you don't have to like baseball to like the Cardinals. I usually go to a game or two every season just because it's a good environment, and I would recommend it to people that don't even like baseball, because it's just amazing to be in a crowd that loves baseball so much and that could be so incredibly proud of their team and so loyal to their team. It's just an experience that's worth having.
Okay. And I have to get back to this a little bit. You grew up within the smell of the brewery. I don't know what a brewery smells like. Does that smell good?
It depends. It smells like hops mostly.
Okay.
So it depends if you like beer or not, I guess. So it doesn't smell bad, but it's definitely a very distinct smell. So you can get sick of it. If you're close to it, it can get a little old, but I like the smell.
I'm just curious because I grew up in Salinas, California, and Salinas is an ag town. In fact, I grew up within the sound of the tractors. But from where I was, if the wind was blowing down the valley, you could smell the Peter Paul and Nestle's plants, which smell very good. But if the wind was blowing up the valley, you got the sewage treatment plants. So you could always go outside and tell exactly which way the wind was blowing. So
actually, the smell of a brewery usually makes me feel like I'm at home. I recently went to Santa Fe, Argentina, and they have a famous brewery there. And as soon as I smelled it, I just felt like I was at home, because I always remember the smell of hops.
Okay. When you think of kind of the ultimate St. Louis day, what's the best day you've had in St. Louis? Best St. Louis kind of day?
Right before I left, I had a really good day when I went for a run with a friend of mine. We went running in Forest Park, and so we went around that huge park, and it was beautiful. We got thirsty, and we decided, hey, we should just go to the zoo, and it was great. So we just ran into the zoo. We didn't have to pay because it's free. We came in, got water. We both visited our favorite animals, and then we thought, we can also go to the art museum. So we went to the art museum. And then we ran back to our house, and we decided to go run up to Grand, which is also very close. So we went to Grand, and we went to the Everest Cafe, which is a Korean, I think it's Nepalese, like Korean and Nepalese food, which is amazing.
An odd combination, okay.
Yeah, it's all really delicious, a lot of vegetarian food. We ran there, got a great lunch, and then we just kind of hung out in the sun for the rest of the day. And it was really... We didn't spend anything other than, I think, the $15 we spent on lunch, and we had an amazing day.
Excellent. As we start to wind this down, where do you go in St. Louis, and you look out and you see something and you say, thank God I was born in St. Louis?
The City Museum really does a lot for me, honestly. I've been on so many field trips there and so many trips with friends, and I think that it's such a unique place that I feel lucky to have such great access to it. And I know that I had friends visit from Chicago once, and I think that once you've been to Chicago, it's really hard to come to St. Louis, and it's hard for me to entertain Chicagoans with St. Louis, because everything we have, they have better and bigger and just more expensive. I could see that I could wow them with was the City Museum. I knew that there was nothing like that in Chicago, and that no one could top that. And so it's really special to me, and I was really sad to leave it almost when I moved away.
Okay. And now that you've moved away and you can look back on St. Louis through different eyes, not living there anymore, what's one thing you think about and you have to laugh and say only in St. Louis?
Oh, I almost hate myself for saying it, but it's totally true. St. Louis is famous for asking what high school you went to. And it's a completely 100% St. Louis thing. We meet someone and you could be 19 or you could be 50, and we would still say, "What's your name?" And then after that, we'd say, "What high school did you go to?" And it's just this ridiculous question that carries all the way through your life, and it's as if you can never escape the high school you went to, as if you chose it, or as if it defines you in some way.
And is that way of identifying the neighborhoods in the town, or?
It's a way of judging you. It's
okay.
just we judge you on the neighborhood you grew up in, or even old sports rivalries, and it's silly because for someone like me, I didn't have any real school pride. I didn't go to any sport games, and to meet people 5-10 years later and them still care about what their football team did to our football team is insane to me, but it still matters to people. And even I find myself, if someone tells me what high school they go to, I think, "Oh, you were probably rich," or "Oh, I understand, like I know what neighborhood you lived in." So
okay.
It's just this silly way to judge people and almost make an instant opinion of them.
Okay. Before we get to our last two questions, anything else people should know before they go to St. Louis?
I'd say one of the hugest downsides about visiting St. Louis is that we have a very underdeveloped public transportation system. So if you are going to visit, you should definitely either have a friend that is going to show you around or rent a car, because there's a few buses and there's one train called the Metrolink, and it's great for going to downtown. And the buses will take you a few places, but it's not very cohesive, and it's nothing like the big cities where you can just depend on that to get around.
Okay. Last two questions. Finish this sentence for me. You really know you're in St. Louis when what?
You know when you're in St. Louis when it's after 3 o'clock in the morning and you still want to drink and you start to head to the east side.
Okay. And the east side is just where the nightlife is?
No, the east side is a saying we have in St. Louis where we're going to the east side, which just means we're crossing over into Illinois. There's a small town called Sauget, Illinois, which basically exists to sell alcohol and have strip clubs. And so in St. Louis, it's against the law to have any bar that stays open past 3 a.m. And it's even it's a certain class of bar that even stays open till 3. We have 3 o'clock bars. And once those close, you either have to go home or go to the east side. And so it's something I hate about St. Louis, that we can't just let it go and go home. But it's very popular to say, well, 3 a.m. bar shutting down, let's go to the east side.
So you cross the Mississippi to go over to Illinois for...
Right.
Okay.
It's 15 minutes, and they have drive-through liquor stores right across the border just for that reason, basically to accommodate St. Louis drunks.
And drive-through liquor stores have always struck me as a particularly strange thing, but, we won't get into that. And last question, if you had to summarize your hometown, St. Louis, Missouri, in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
I'd say food, potential, and baseball, as much as I hated food, potential, and baseball.
Potential.
Potential, yeah. I'd say potential just because St. Louis is full of the most talented and well-educated people that live with their parents and wait tables, because the market is oversaturated and nobody wants to leave. So that was part of why I left, is that I couldn't watch my friends be bartenders or go to the east side on a Monday. I couldn't do it anymore.
Okay. And here, a bonus question for you. One way Buenos Aires is not St. Louis.
Oh. Buenos Aires is not as clean as St. Louis. St. Louis, not that it's a pristine city, but we do have a lot of green and a lot of parks and a lot of places to just be outside, where Buenos Aires is a industrial, dirty city with a lot of littering, and that's one of my biggest things, is that I don't like litter, and it's really hard for me to live somewhere where people don't care about their city. In St. Louis, we see trash on the ground and we just pick it up, even if it's not ours.
Okay. And where can we read more about your travel writing?
I have a website. It's called travelated.com. I should spell that out. It's TRAVELATED. It's a combination of the word travel and elated. So travelated.com is my travel blog, and it's actually a travel community site. There's blogs by my friend Emily and I, and there's also a few articles by Alex, who's also a part of our team. And we accept guest blogs, and we do tips for traveling, and we also have a brand new add-on for Firefox that just came out where it's called Travel Scout, and you install it for free, and anytime you're on a travel site that we have coupons or promos for, you'll get a notification, and it just helps you save money.
Excellent. Well, Rease, thanks so much for coming on the Amateur Traveler and telling us about your hometown of St. Louis.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. It was a great time.
In news of the community, I received an email from Mickey who's looking for immersive experiences for learning Spanish. If you happen to know the name of a good Spanish school, an immersion program, please go to the discussion boards, amateurtraveler.com/board, to viewer questions and help Mickey out. We heard from Barry, who commented on the episode on Gibraltar with some additional pieces of advice. The cost of visiting Gibraltar were higher than Spain, which is already high. Instead of staying right in the city, we booked a room in the Calenta Hotel on the eastern side of Gibraltar. The rooms were very nice and well situated on a cliff at the very edge of the Mediterranean. This might be a location visited by surfers mentioned in the podcast. We definitely saw waves that might appeal to surfers. The hotel proved to be a good choice and was only a short drive around the Rook to the city. A bus was also available to regularly take visitors back and forth to the city. Definitely beware of the Gibraltar apes. They can be fun to watch, but are also very wild animals and should be treated as such. We read the warnings about their aggressive nature in the guidebooks, but we really didn't think too much about it. While talking to my daughter, I found that one of the apes grabbed my backpack right off my shoulder. In fact, in no time at all, he opened the zipper and was rummaging through looking for food. Apparently, he felt entitled to any snacks or food he could find. My instinctive reaction was to yell at him, "Give me that back," and I quickly pulled it out of his hands. This proved to be the right action. If he ran away with my pack, I'm not sure what I would have done. I believe the correct way to deal with monkeys is to say, "You monkey, you, give me back my pack." Lastly, one small but useful piece of advice. After being in Spain for a week, we began to get accustomed to late dining hours, which usually do not begin until 10 or 11 p.m. We assumed the same customs were assumed on Gibraltar. We soon found out that the town operates more on a British schedule than on a Spanish schedule we had become accustomed to. After setting out at about 9 p.m. to look for a place to eat that featured British food, we soon found that many places were in the process of closing or were planning to close around 10 p.m. We quickly ended up finding a place to eat in Ocean Village Marina. There were some Spanish-style restaurants that were open later, but we really had our hearts on something that seemed British. For more Barry's comments, check out the show notes on traveling to Gibraltar. With that, we're going to end this episode of The Amateur Traveler. I'll be heading down to Southern California again this week. If anybody happens to be in the Long Beach area this week, let me know. I'll put something on the Amateur Traveler Facebook page as well to that effect. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com or drop me an email to host@amateurtraveler.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Chris2X. As always, thanks so much for listening.
I got to see one more cathedral. I got to sit in one more cafe.